This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Thank you, Peter Katz. John Bailey, the Citizen Net reporter on White Plains Week, the weekly news show, with Jim Benerofe, the Dean of Journalism in the City of White Plains, and Peter Katz is on assignment today. Right now, it's headline time.
And here are the news headlines for the week of April 26, 2018. Shelley Mayer is elected your new state senator by a mayor storm for the Senate District 37, George Latimer's former seat. 22% vote. White Plains YMCA announces it will close. Westchester County legislators consider banning plastic bags in county. Charges for paper bags. County executive not too sure about that. County Executive George Latimer says report on Playland goes to his administration first, then the county legislators, and then will be revealed to the public. Latimer says review of the county airport lease deal will take to the end of the year to make a decision. Latimer announces county plans to restore the Nathan Miller House. Westchester Power announces customers on the green energy rate now are receiving wind-generated electricity. Dan Walsh says there is enough capacity on the power grid to replace Indian Point output when it closes. Governor Cuomo tells ICE to stop their reckless, unconstitutional raids in New York. We take a closer video look at the potential on Harlem Avenue at the North White Plains train station. The zoning change is coming to a hearing May 7th. President Trump bobs and weaves on the issues. It's day to day. Melania Trump charms the French first couple.
Thank you, Jim. And now we go to the White Plains Week video newsreel, March of Time. And this is outside the White Plains High School on Election Day, where, oddly enough, it was two-way traffic in the middle of the day, at the beginning of the school day, and late in the school day because of a situation that was very interesting. They moved the venue of the where the vote was at the high school over to the cafeteria, which confused a lot of persons. And that was, but there was no confusion at the polls, was there, Jim?
No.
Here are the results coming up. Shelley Mayer won the state Senate, and here was the results. 26,918 votes to 19,963 for Julie Killian. 57% of the vote to 43% was Mayer's margin. But what's interesting is that 46,881 voters voted out of 210,121 registered in District 37. 22%. That was, and what you have in the 37th district is 85,000 Democrats, 57,000 Republicans, and apparently the Republicans were not too motivated by Julie Killian's candidacy. What did you think, Jim?
Probably not. I mean, they didn't really get out the vote.
No. I mean, they had to have every Republican come on out if they were really enthusiastic. And that's what it said to me. Oh, if we can have that slide back again, I want to make a point about how much money was spent on this campaign. $1 million by Mayor, $1 million by Killian's campaign, $1.5 million by groups, and $2.3 million of it was spent in TV radio. 1.9 by Ms. Killian, who tried to get her message out on television, and $450,000 by Mayor. Now, what do we have here? Let's look at the next slide, the district. There we have, that is the White Plains 37th Senate District, and there is a rough view of the cities that are in it. And if we have the next slide, please, we can see the top part of the district where Bedford is in. Now, those are all the cities and towns that are in the district. And what happens is White Plains, just from a strictly parochial standpoint, Jim, is basically overshadowed to the White Plains, New Rochelle areas. Do we really have a senator? Have we ever? Right. But be that as it may, I think this gerrymandering of that district is absurd, because you've got Ms. Mayor, who's from Yonkers, who now has to cross over that White Plains border on a more frequent basis, and the city, Tom Roach, Mr. Callahan, has to lobby Ms. Mayor for some of that money. In fact, I was looking at state aid to White Plains, Jim, and it has not gone up at all in 10 years. At the end of the Delfino administration, it was about $5 million. It's still just about $5 million. And if you figure 2% a year inflation, it should be up around $9 million now. Come on, a little bit of money, Shelley. They're counting on you. So, moving on, we now have an intriguing situation with the school district. The school district had its its English language assessments, and the opt-out rate was down. 13% of the students taking tests from 3rd to 8th grade opted out. The vast majority up in the high school, up in the middle school, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, but the rate down in the elementary schools really declined under 10%. I think this is good. And you know what, Jim? There was not the lobbying for opting out that we saw last year at all. And what is your feeling as a parent about the opting out issue?
Well, I think it would be better if, probably, if nobody opted out, period.
That's right. It certainly would be. It gives a false indication to the educators.
Yeah.
And hopefully parents will get away from this, because it only hurts your child. If you think he's really, or she is really going to do badly on them, and you hold him out, that's not going to help. It's going to go on their record, and in the long run, they can't do anything for them if they don't know exactly where they stand. I mean, opting out is just a terrible issue for any journalism entity to champion, or group for that matter. It's not about all of you teachers, it's about the students, and that you don't learn anything if you don't have these assessment tests. Now, speaking of assessments, Dr. Joseph Recca, the superintendent of schools, will be on People to Be Heard again this week discussing the budget, the school budget, and it's an excellent interview program, even if I do say so myself, because Dr. Recca makes some solid points as to why this budget is a good one. And now, a White Plains issue, Jim. Your favorite workout place, the YMCA, announced it was closing. Can you tell us about that?
Well, they've had a number of problems in the past year or so, one of which is both swimming pools were closed, and it's my understanding that they will not be able to reopen them. I don't know exactly what the problems were, and I think they had other. The facility is an aging facility. The pool area is obviously a newer segment than the original old YMCA,
Yeah.
which was on the right in that picture. But I think they have more issues. They had more issues to deal with than it made sense for them to continue with.
Right.
So.
More maintenance issues,
Yeah.
and rehabilitation issues, and also competition from so many health clubs,
Yeah.
even in town. Now, I understand they are going to be trying to relocate persons who are living in the Y, and they figure it'll take about 2 years to sell it. Now, what do you think about this property? Is this very attractive to a developer? Say?
I would say the property is very attractive to a
Yes.
developer. I think that that's the one thing that they really have going for them, is that somebody will come in there and give them a bucket of money, so to speak.
A bucket of money, yes.
You know, and it still remains to be seen as to how they're going to handle services and whatnot, but they are going to continue to operate in some fashion. And they have other sections of the Y that operate without facilities. So I don't know exactly how it's going to work. We'll have to wait and hear more about what's planned. I'm sure
So call up the YMCA and get your bids in fast. I'm sure. Okay, very good. Just a tip out there to people who have a lot of loose change. Right? Now, the Nathan Miller House is in the news, and this is what it looks like. It's up on Virginia Road in North White Plains, and County Executive George Latimer announced a plan Thursday. We could not attend, to rehabilitate the Nathan Miller House, which has been like that for years. It's very historic. It's where George Washington headquartered for part of the time he was in White Plains, and it will be very interesting to see that develop into a historic site. It's really a terrible place now, but I mean, I don't know if there's a plan to move it or not. Now, we talked with, we got in the mail, I participated in the Sustainable Westchester Power Green Energy Rate, in which I get my ethologically pure power at a lower rate. And we got this letter pointing out on the left that we would now be paying 0.08 cents per kilowatt hour, and it's slightly up, and the reason for that was Governor Cuomo's surcharge to help out the nuclear plants up north, and they also picked a new, Constellation Energy picked a wind supplier that now means that we are getting wind-generated power exclusively. And we're going to find out more about that next week. We're going to talk to Dan Walsh and where it all stands. Another thing he told me, Jim, was we don't have to worry about the Indian Point closing. There's enough electricity on the grid to take care of us, he says. And he also pointed out that gas is so inexpensive now that it may not cost us anymore. But we'll have to find out more about that. So, yes. However, it's good to see that Indian Point is becoming obsolete fast. Whether or not those nuclear plants up in the north part of the state, which are being subsidized thanks to the largesse of Westchester County residents and the rest of the state, will continue to be subsidized. And one other thing I want to mention about Governor Cuomo is he launched a new solar facility up in New Paltz at the university there. There it is right there. And this is a solar plant that is going to supply power and emergency power to the university on that site should power go out, which, as we know in Westchester, seems to happen on a regular basis and last out a long time. But that is another issue about solar power. You can use it to supplement your electrical needs. And you, I understand, are supplementing your electrical needs by putting in a very interesting solar thing. You wanted to talk about it?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it. We're going to put in a power wall, which is built by Tesla. It's a battery that operates the house, and we're going to put in solar panels on the roof. Unless those panels are covered with snow, it can run the house, I think, indefinitely.
Right. Would you use it to run the house on a regular basis or just in emergency?
I don't know. I'll have to see when it gets installed.
Cut that Con Ed cord. That would be cool. But anyway, I think that's very, very forward-looking, and it also fits in with what the New Paltz facility is doing. It's providing power when you don't have it, which is a nice thing. A lot of people were victimized, and by the way, that has sort of disappeared. We haven't heard a lot of saber rattling about Con Ed and New York State Electric and Gas since that big brouhaha where the politicians had a field day slamming Con Ed, and rightly so, but they got to follow up and keep giving it to them. Otherwise, the PSC said, well, it was a big storm, which seems to be the big excuse these days for everything. Now, Governor Cuomo also took on ICE. He announced that he was demanding that ICE stop raiding in New York. And he issued a cease and desist letter to ICE, demands immediate stop of, quote, reckless and unconstitutional enforcement actions, he expands the executive order to prohibit ICE arrests in state facilities in addition to prohibiting state agencies from inquiring about immigration status. So, hey, are we cruising for the Supreme Court or what? I mean, we are. That is going to go to court, and we are just going to see what happens with that one. Now, last week, Jim, we talked about the North White Plains zoning change that is coming up on the next council meeting, May the 7th, and I thought we would take a more closer look.
That's a council meeting or a planning board?
I believe it is the council meeting. Oh. Believe so. The council's discussed it, and but be that as it may, we will move on and take a look at this train station in more depth. So here's some video. And there is the North White Plains Station on Harlem, H-A-A-R-L-E-M Avenue. And this ordinance, as I remember, will allow 4 to 6 story construction along the station side. And here we're zooming on up to basically where the White Plains Bus Company is. And up to the left are the freight yards. So, what do you think, James? Is that a developable block in your opinion?
I don't know. I haven't driven through there recently. I don't know what's possibly could be available. That area tended to have some light industrial space, and I actually, and this was a number of years ago, did my own study in that in connection with something at the time the city was doing with the planning department. I don't know, a certain industrial space I think is pretty valuable to have. the industrial market and real estate is pretty good.
You have the apartments just north of the White Plains Rural Cemetery there, which are very nice apartments. And perhaps the city's vision is to repopulate it, so we'll make that strip right up to the White Plains line and beyond a little more mixed use, as they say. The key words of the day is mixed use. But are we perhaps looking for too many apartments, or can you never have enough apartments? What do you think about that?
You know, I really don't know. They've opened the continuum, of course, and those apartments, I think, are pricey. I mean, you're talking about ranging from a little over $2,000 up to as high as $4,000 a month. So
that's $50,000 a year.
And that's $50,000 a year. You've got to have a pretty good income to handle
couple $100,000 if you go by the rule of thumb of 25% of your income to be spent on housing. But here's another question for you. Is the city actually, due to the financial crisis, getting a break here by having many of the projects not all starting construction at the same time, but coming on stream staggeredly so they can adjust as demand is filled, slacks, and then goes up again?
Yeah, I think that coming on stream gradually is better than coming on all at once. I mean, when you have, for instance, if you have, and it's as high as 3,000 or 4,000 apartments, I think. If you have that come on all at once, it's probably going to take a little time to absorb that. And
well, you might be forced to lower your price points at below what your
well, you know, you don't know. They base their price points, I think, on what they've gotten financing-wise. And I don't know how far they can lower their price points if their mortgages will allow them. You know, I'm sure that there's some stipulation in the mortgage that says
it's like
you have to have a certain level
renting
of rent.
short.
Yeah.
Yes. There, I've coined a new financial term which will be quickly pounced upon by the media, since I invent words all the time.
Right.
Now, let's go to Washington, D.C., USA. Shall we do that? Washington, D.C., USA, Jim, continued to dominate the psyche of Americans attached to their enslavement to the cable news channels. The Supreme Court heard arguments on President Trump's third revised and abridged travel ban aimed at refugees and travelers from Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. Analysis by Supreme Court justices, observers of the arguments, believe the court conservative majority will rule 5 across the board that the third Trump take on the ban is constitutional. Their rationale is based on the judge's statements and questioning in court, and they feel that the new ban is vague enough to not be discriminatory, and that they do not want to tie a future president's ability to protect national security. Do you have any feeling about that? Do you?
Quite frankly, I would have to study the issue more carefully. It's really hard, I think, to state it in black and white terms. You know, there's so many things going on with immigration today, and I used to get a lot of information on immigration, but you really have to spend an incredible amount of time reading material to find out where everything is at. But I certainly, if you get to the DACA situation, I feel that that should stay the way it is.
That is another matter.
Yeah.
It's pending in the court. And in another potentially damaging matter, the court is considering tossing out a tort law dating back to 1789, created with the Constitution, that held interests in a new America at the time liable to be sued for damages for illegal gains, profits, and advantages they gained from relationships with foreign institutions whose objectives were not America's best interests. How wise our forefathers were, right? Thinking of that at the time. And that was, of course, the Tories' fixation during the American Revolution on staying with Britain and sort of working against the colonists, the rebels' interests. So, the present case involves a case involving Arab Bank, which has alleged ties to handling monies for terrorist organizations and meeting their payrolls, for God's sake. And the court, once again, the conservative majority, is considering whether profits made by American corporations dealing with such a bank as Arab Bank through their investing of money overseas can be sued for damages by individuals victimized by terrorist organizations, drug trafficking operations, human trafficking rings, and whether or not they could sue, victims could sue corporations in this country. That is, if they strike down that tort, that would go against all they've said about the Constitution over the years. Think about that. But that is very damaging and basically gives corporations carte blanche to do whatever they want if it makes money, which seems to be what they always do, right? How silly of me not to think that's not the objective, whether it's dirty money, bloody money, or whatever. They don't care. It's just green to them. If the conservative wing of the court strikes down the right to sue American corporations for irresponsible practices, business practices abroad, resulting in damages that individuals, then corporations without consciences will be given carte blanche to enable arm's length operations that are ultimately not in America's best interests. James Comey's new book is taking off like a rocket, just as his publishing tour of interview after interview, disguised as news by news organizations interviewing him in pursuit of ratings, had planned. But hey, the Comey damage has been done, guys. President Obama's failure and the FBI's failure to disclose Russian hacking in July of 2016, which has not been criticized to any degree comparable to Comey's disclosure of Hillary Clinton's emails. The truth is a harsh mistress, folks, and she exacts a harrowing, lasting penalty on the leaders, the public, and the persons responsible for hiding the truth for their own self-interest and image down through history. Melania Trump, long maligned and ridiculed, and here's a picture of Melania, made fun of by media of all sorts, triumphed and won over a lot of Americans Monday by apparently planning the Trump administration's first state dinner for Emmanuel Macron and his First Lady, Brigitte Macron. Mrs. Trump researched and supervised an elegant affair with a menu that made your mouth water. Goat cheese gâteau, tomato jam, buttermilk biscuit crumbles, young variegated lettuce. Entree was rack of spring lamb, burnt capellini soubise, and Carolina gold race jambalaya. Yum yum. An elegant affair that puts Mrs. Trump on a par with Jacqueline Kennedy. President Trump said he would have to junk the Iran nuclear agreement months ago, but after discussions with President Macron, Trump said he was willing to renegotiate the deal. Iran's leader cried foul. And that's all the time we have. More Trump next week. Jim, thank you. John Bailey, Jim Benerofe, good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.